Breaking news that this is some more of. Professional guy you only just heard about, Shane Gillis, was recently canceled from Saturday Night Live over telling a few jokes. And what kind of liberal, fascist, 1984 dystopian future are we living in, where a good, honest American is denied such a basic human right as being hired by a lukewarm late-night television show just because he pushed a few boundaries with his humor? Isn't that what humor is all about? Pushing boundaries with edgy, side-splitting jabs like...
Damn, Chinatown's f***ing nuts.
It's crazy, dude.
It is full f***ing China. Dude, it's f***ing Chinese down there.
I wonder how that started. They just built one f***ed up looking building and people were like, all right, no one said anything.
Let the f***ing chicks live there, huh?
This just in. Ha 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 ha. What a joke he just told. What with the whole setup of the joke and the punchline of that joke clearly formatted like a joke, as opposed to a guy just saying offhand racial slurs. This is what jokes are. Let's hear another joke.
It's funny too, because that's more annoying than any other minority playing music at a restaurant, loud on their phone.
Do you think an Asian
trying to learn English bothers me more than someone listening to like Lil Uzi Vert while I'm trying to eat fucking dinner?
That's hilarious.
Yes, that's hilarious. What a hilarious joke, where you are bothered by Asian people trying to learn English, and other hilarious jokes like calling people f***s and stuff. Now, in Shane's defense, his offer to apologize, if anyone wants him to, does mention that he's been mostly bad at comedy for the last 10 years. But honestly, we're not here to on this specific guy. You know, he got SNL and he lost it. And aside from the casual racism and homophobia and racial slurs, he's not unfunny. He was in a sketch a year ago about a fireman who saves a family, and during the interview, the reporter brings up this.
The family of 4 was saved thanks to the efforts of one firefighter, Shane McGillis. Shane, you fought this fire for 3 hours.
Yeah. It was pretty brutal up there.
Can you confirm this is you?
And like, that's funny. The sketch devolves into the reporter digging up Trump stuff and blowing some out of proportion and actively trying to get the fireman fired. And then he does. And it's funny. It's a good, not untrue point, and Shane is funny in it. And I think it actually would have been interesting to introduce his point of view to a, some might say, lukewarm and annoyingly liberal comedy show that ultimately challenges nothing about the status quo. If that's why they wanted to hire him. But actually, apparently, they just wanted to appeal to more people and make more money by hiring like a token Trumpy kind of guy. And then they were surprised when that manifested in some homophobia and racial slurs. And that's hilarious. Funniest thing SNL's done in years. If Shane did it on purpose as a bit, man, you're brilliant. Good joke. But of course, whether or not you think the casual racial slurs and complaining about Asian people trying to learn English are jokes, or even funny jokes, like pushing aside the humor aspect, it totally seems indicative that this brand new outrage culture that's new and real is digging through everyone's past like this. Huh? You know, like Jim Jeffries and Bill Burr, am I right?
Well, this is just cancel culture. The guy shouldn't have been fired. It's just a couple of things back in his history. We're going to go through everyone's history.
Did you just scroll through, help cat out of a tree? That's not it. Help grandmother walk across the street? That's not it. You know, said something on a podcast. There it is.
Yeah, you know what?
I mean, you could do that. You could honestly do that to anybody.
Yeah. Who the heck are these PC warriors tirelessly digging through this guy's history to find a bunch of mistakes from his youth back in September of 2018? Fun aside, that is also a perfect summary of what's actually happening here. In that clip, Bill Burr later makes a really awkward joke about Asian people at lumber yards, and no one really laughs that hard because it didn't quite work as a joke. And then he gets mad that no one laughed that hard and accuses the audience of being too PC.
If you say something like that, you can't work in a sketch show, but like it's okay from what? He can work at a lumber yard?
Yeah.
You know? He's certainly going to meet more Asians there, right? Then on SNL, it's a joke about how SNL's not hiring Asians. Jesus Christ.
Also...
Now I'm in trouble?
Yeah.
It's almost like if you're famous enough as a comedian, you feel entitled to immediate praise and blame the audience when a joke doesn't work, despite it being a funny observation about SNL not hiring Asians until this year. But whatever, we're going to move on. I'm sure that has nothing to do with any of the rest of what we're going to talk about. So let's actually back up for a second before we dive into the idea of cancel culture. First, by defining what it is for the sake of this conversation, but also because it seems that a lot of the time cancel culture is it's people being mad at your shitty opinion. Like if you write a bad column in a newspaper or tweet about how much harmless fun it is getting your face dicked in and everyone tells you it's shitty, You're not being canceled. You just did a bad job. That racist kid getting booted from Harvard wasn't canceled, but he was kicked from an institution for apparently violating their standards. Now, I'm not saying you have to agree with that, or that mob justice is good, because a lot of the time it's very bad, and public shaming can really get out of hand. Social media, digital photos, better record keeping, and the internet in general have created a situation where everyone's past is going to be painfully available. And as millennials grow older, we'll have to figure out how to deal with that and what the forgiveness process will be. It's extremely complicated and distressing to think about. But it often seems like the large canopy of the cancel culture phrase often makes it hard to address, which is why I'm really going to hone it in. I'm not talking about a bunch of people dogpiling some rando for saying dumb shit on Twitter that never would have gotten attention had someone pointed it out. I'm talking about famous people, comedians, entertainers, being canceled or fired from jobs or gigs because someone dug up an offensive statement or tweet or photo from their past. That is, after all, why we're using the word canceled, and why any recent article about the subject is specifically talking about people like Shane Gillis or that Justin Trudeau fellow from Up America with all the trees. Also, to be clear, the idea that a person's entire career could be ruined, like ended, over a couple of offensive tweets is terrible, and I'm not a fan of that. Unsubscribe. Luckily, that's literally never happened, really. Like it's not a thing at all. You don't believe me? Just ask my good friend Bill Burr again, this time saying that cancel culture isn't a problem.
But I mean, I don't go on stage and worry about what people are thinking. Right. It's a really weird time where people are just bringing this up all the time like this is a major problem. I'm not experiencing it. I think it's like a half a dozen stories, and like usual, they're trying to act like, you know, the sky is falling. It isn't.
This version of him is right. The answer to the question, has cancel culture and SJWs gone too far? Is a resounding, not really. Most audiences love offensive shit, and the few who don't usually walk out. Twitter hasn't changed that. In fact, name a comedian or entertainer who has their career canceled over a few statements or jokes they made. Like truly canceled. Roseanne Barr? She's probably the closest one, although she's currently planning a comeback as we speak. James Gunn? Not exactly like it actually affected his career, and he is in fact back at the job he was fired from, plus a Suicide Squad do-over film featuring only some of the original cast that we're apparently going to just allow DC to do. But anyway, not related. Gilbert Gottfried is no longer a duck because he made fun of some dead people, but his career isn't over. Paula Deen, you know, the really racist lady, is currently hosting cooking shows like nothing happened. Alec Baldwin just got his own celebrity roast. Heck, even Mel, the Jews start all the wars, sugar tits, Gibson, has received multiple Oscar nominations in the last few years. Then Gary Oldman defended him, said that Hollywood was, quote, run by Jews, and went on to win an Oscar for Best Actor. So, thanks, all the Jews that run Hollywood, for that award you gave him, or so I've heard. From Gary Oldman. Scarlett Johansson is a torrent of hilariously bad comments, and we fucking love her. SNL fired Jenny Slate for saying not racial slurs, but the word f*** at midnight on a Saturday. She too is doing great. Another person who got literally canceled was Bill Maher's politically incorrect. And it wasn't because he offended the Snowflakes by being racist or homophobic, or when he compared mentally disabled people to dogs, or the numerous times he said it's totally cool for a female teacher to f*** their 14-year-old male students, or any number of his other terrible, lazy, scumbag opinions he espouses on his long-running, not-canceled show currently on HBO. No, politically incorrect got canceled because Maher implied the United States was cowardly for launching missiles from 1,000 miles away. And then the White House press secretary used his government position to condemn private citizen Maher and pulled because he insulted the troops and then he got canceled. So maybe the real snowflakes are our government and military. But again, this isn't a judgment on these people or whether or not they should have faced harsher consequences or whether or not the actual f***ed up free speech issue is when a comedian gets canceled for insulting the government and the military. Those opinions are up to you, the viewer. Rather, I'm just asking the simple question, who exactly has been canceled? Sinead O'Connor for criticizing the Pope? Yeah. But where's the cancel culture epidemic that's going around and hurting these poor celebrities? I'll go even further and mention some celebrities who not only said shitty things, but did shitty things. Roman Polanski is a rapist, and yet also has won all of the awards, and even got to be in a Rush Hour film where he played a rapist as a comedy bit.
So we can go now? This will just take a moment. Welcome to Paris. Oh,
Casey Affleck drunkenly and nakedly got into the bed of the cinematographer of the film he was working on, and is still directing and starring in movies, putting him very much in a power position. TJ Miller has been accused of rape and definitely called in a fake bomb threat within the same year he was in a f***ing Spielberg film. I could go on for a solid hour. Like, once you actually go down the list, you realize that the pearl-clutching panic has nothing to do with offended millennials so much as entitled rich people who are upset that there are now slightly more consequences to their actions. And that, incredibly, it turns out that big corporate giants like Marvel and Saturday Night Live sometimes, but not always, play it safe when it comes to not hiring absolute ghouls or mild ghouls. That's it. The big outrage is that potentially racist or abusive people aren't getting all the power they think they deserve, while still probably getting too much power. While it has a lot of funny moments, this is painfully evident in Dave Chappelle's new stand-up special.
Against all the odds, Kevin became the most famous comedian this world has ever seen, and he got the job that only one black man before him had had. He was going to host the 80th Oscars. And I don't know what you know about Kevin, but I know Kevin Hart is damn near perfect. As close to perfect as anybody I've ever seen. In fact, Kevin is precisely 4 tweets shy of being perfect.
Now just to be clear, which is a phrase I feel like I'll have to use a lot, that new special has a lot of great jokes, but it's also peppered with moments that feel suspiciously like one rich guy complaining that his other rich friends aren't getting exactly what they want. Kevin Hart isn't entitled to host the goddamn Oscars, a position designed for wide audiences that should be vetted. Like, how much do we need to feel bad that the guy who just had a major role in the 7th highest grossing film of the year didn't have everything perfectly laid out for his career because he made garbage homophobic comments as a joke in 2010 about hurting his son if he was gay? A bit that I hope his son never sees, especially if he's gay. Now, to be clearer than clearest, Chappelle even acknowledges during his special that he isn't exactly impartial in defending his friends. And even clearest, the only reason I'm talking about Sticks and Stones is because it's oddly the subject of a weird internet war concerning cancel culture. But what is kind of frustrating is to see so many comedians like him complain that PC culture is out of control and that they aren't allowed to say anything they want, while literally saying anything they want on a $60 million platform on the biggest streaming service around. Like, you can't be the underdog when you're standing on a pile of dead dogs. You can't complain that audiences are too sensitive to an audience that's clearly loving your offensive material on a special that's breaking ratings records. So, no, cancel culture, as in seeing harsh mob consequences for famous people who've done or said racist or sexist or offensive things, doesn't actually exist. And in fact, maybe it should exist more? Like really, like again, I'm not for someone losing their entire career or livelihood over a shitty joke. A thing that, again, isn't happening. And it would be great if our society had a strong social safety net to help the few canceled racists out there to survive. But here's another part from that Chappelle special that better explains what I'm talking about.
They ruined this nigga's life, and now he's coming back playing comedy clubs.
That's Dave describing Louis C.K., a comedian who was called out by the Snowflakes for masturbating in front of female colleagues at his place of work, after a comedy festival, on the pilot of a TV show, on the phone with another comedian trying to network with him. Like, this isn't a few offensive jokes, but a literal workplace harassment issue. And according to Chappelle, they ruined his life for it. But also, according to Chappelle, in literally the same sentence, he's coming back playing comedy clubs. You know, because they didn't actually ruin his life. And he's in fact still got a career despite being a literal sex offender.
Ladies and gentlemen, Louis C.K.
Look at him. Getting that standing ovation? His life is ruined! Geez, when will we stop destroying the lives of men by denying them everything they ever wanted because they whipped their dicks out in front of women who didn't want them to? Oh, yeah, that poor Brett. Must have been hard to almost not, but ultimately get a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court. Gosh darn cancel culture, almost holding powerful people accountable for things, but not actually doing that. It's almost as if, and I'm just spitballing here, a word that probably means something wildly different to Kavanaugh, but it's almost as if this idea of outrage and cancel culture is creating a backlash to completely normal consequences, and powerful rich people who've done objectively bad things are being hailed as a hero underdog in certain corners. It's the equivalent of Trump's presidential harassment tweets. A person who has all the power complaining about critique from marginalized groups, pretending to be the bullied while having all of the actual authority. The reality is that nothing has changed except a new way for people to communicate their critiques and a new way for powerful people to deflect accountability. PC culture isn't killing comedy. Millennials aren't overly sensitive. The people who whine that you can't make a film like Blazing Saddles anymore also like to conveniently forget that time Robert Downey Jr. got an Oscar nomination for literally doing blackface in a comedy from only 10 years ago. He, of course, lost to a man dressed as a clown because movies are weird and dumb. But to be fair, and balanced, and a real cool news daddy, it's technically true that you can't make Blazing Saddles, a comedy from the 70s, today. Just like how you can't make a horror movie from the 70s today, or do or say a lot of the things from the 70s today. You can't because you wouldn't. Things that were said and done then don't need to necessarily be said and done now. Because that's how time works, you know? Like, let's take this specific moment that's happening right now. Like right now. Not now, but right before now. It's already moving away. But the moment from a few seconds ago I was talking about, in that moment, our society had specific rules for what's considered taboo and offensive. And those things tend to change as time progresses. It's how that works. So when people say shit like, Dave Chappelle didn't change, you did. Like, yep, that's true. Good work identifying time. Like, things have changed. Our president is a ghoul trying to roll back protections for transgender people, and bullying women, and being openly racist, and doing just generally f*** all for marginalized groups in this country. So maybe jokes about that subject aren't going to be as accepted by mainstream society. Seinfeld the show could be irreverent, but there's a reason it didn't have a running joke about a man threatening to beat the shit out of his wife. Also, some jokes just get old, like people. If the one trans joke all of these people are saying is, I identify as something that isn't a gender, every one of them say this, then maybe people are just bored with your one joke you saw on Reddit 10 years ago. Like, by all means, make whatever jokes you want, I guess, but also don't be surprised if people don't want to hear it, or if you lose large corporate gigs for it, or if your audience slowly becomes a bunch of racists, or I guess you run an extremely successful YouTube channel despite being kind of a fucking Nazi clown. Things change, kind of, but actually not enough. Thanks, Internet. Seriously, thanks. I really need this job, if one can even call it that. But you know what didn't change? The process in which famous people see consequences from big companies for saying or doing things deemed offensive by mainstream society. Like, here's a CBS sports commentator named Jimmy the Greek, who got fired back in the 80s for being a real weird racist. Is he a victim of cancel culture? Eddie Murphy said a bunch of terrible shit about gay people, and then apologized about it in the 90s when people spoke up. Martin Lawrence was barred from NBC in the 90s for doing offensive stand-up comedy. Damon Wayans was fired from SNL in that same decade for making a character flamboyantly gay. Then there was that time Lisa Bonet appeared in a very adult film and was nearly fired for it from The Cosby Show due to objections from Bill Cosby. This is just capitalism and the entertainment industry. It's just comedy and it's nothing new. Really, the only thing that you could say has changed is that famous celebrities and comedians have way more direct exposure to criticism. You could go on Twitter right now and call Tom Hanks a dick-witted shit receptacle, and he might read it. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you could, is my point. And the irony is that we're not seeing an epidemic of overly sensitive, PC-obsessed millennial audiences, but actually overly sensitive performers who don't like the realization that perhaps they aren't always on the mark, that perhaps times are changing and they need to keep up. But instead of accepting that, they blame the audience, you know, to the point where they're so focused on responding to cancel culture that they forget to be all that funny. Like, here's Adam Carolla on the latest Comedy Central roast, spending like a minute and a half responding to imaginary people he predicts will be offended by the show.
And if I can rant for just 1 minute here, you're a great sport, you have a great sense of humor, unlike the social justice warriors who are going to be out there tweeting that all the jokes are problematic. You people can blow me, you pussy fucksticks. This is a damn roast. Comedians need a place where they can be offensive without your bullshit fake outrage. You hashtag heroes.
A thing that didn't happen. That clip continues, and it continues to be very embarrassing, and we won't show you the whole thing. Because we all know what roasts are, Adam. We also know what bad jokes are. Like, perhaps when Jerry Seinfeld makes a gay French king joke at a college and no one laughs, it's because the audience is like 45 years younger than him and don't think the act of being gay is an edgy punchline anymore. He should know that, right? Like, after all, this is the demographic of his ideal date. So, you want to f some teens, Jerry? You might want to update that material. Polish that teen f***ing material, Jerry. You objectively a teen f***er, you? Jerry the teen f***er. Where was I? All right, so you know what also helps with this stuff? Apologizing. And I mean, like, not just saying, I'm sorry if anyone out there was offended, but seriously, broad, get thicker skin. But, like, actually apologizing. Because a lot of the reasons someone like Shane Gillis got canned has to do with the way he handled the scandal after the fact, showing that he just didn't have what it took to deal with the heat. Or that he stuck to his principles and was like, no, the casual racial slurs were pushing boundaries. This is my fight song. I won't apologize. And SNL was like, okay, we're a cowardly institution and we want money, so bye. Even the Washington goddamn Examiner recognized this fact while still managing to pretend cancel culture in general was a problem, which it really isn't, but whatever. Apologies matter. So many people who complain about cancel culture and our society's lack of forgiveness forgets that. Jonah Hill did a pretty good one. Dan Harmon super apologized. Even Justin Bieber understood the very basic steps needed for an apology. Do you forgive them? That's up to you. But they apologized in a seemingly sincere way, recognizing what they did wrong and why it was wrong, and they continued with their careers, uncanceled. Because a lot of the time, that's all a company and the public needs to hear. We want to forgive these people. It literally took 2 racist scandals over the span of 4 years for us to cancel Mel Gibson, who continues to work in movies and is in fact not canceled. Remember that Kevin Hart Oscar story? He literally just had to apologize and didn't. That's why he wasn't the host. Not because of cancel culture, but ego. The refusal to own up to basic consequences. The brazen pride in not progressing with the times, which again, is fine. But you can't also whine about outrage culture, because, I don't know if you've figured this out yet, it's not a thing. It's a myth. O.J. Simpson has 900,000 Twitter followers. Donald Trump bragged about groping women and became a... That can't be right. President! But sure, humor changes. You need to evolve. Remember that pretty gosh darn funny comic from all those Comedy Central roasts named Lisa Lampanelli? Probably one of the edgiest comics when it came to insult humor dealing with race and sexual orientation. She recently retired and became a life coach. And her reasoning wasn't that audiences were too PC or that millennials are too sensitive. Nor did she put out a comedy special called Triggered, where she complained about how she can't say the N-word. No, this was her reason.
So now that we're in such crazy times where, kids are killing themselves because they're going through hard things, where people are having a hard time being transgender, where people are crapped on because they're women or because they're minorities, and I just said, I want to do something that has absolutely no mistake about it, has a positive message. And again, that doesn't mean not being funny. It doesn't mean crying. It doesn't mean just every show's for charity. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be who I really am. Because the real me now is somebody who kind of grew up and said, oh, I'm absolutely going to, have some positive freaking message for people.
Hey! Look at the very self-aware person evolving with the times and rationally explaining why that's totally okay to do. Because yeah, it's really tough to be a certain demographic of people right now, and people are hurting themselves and getting hurt. And so maybe when a rich celebrity says a slur, we should hold them accountable and not necessarily allow them to have a wide reach on, say, a major variety TV show or the f***ing Oscars. It's really not any more complicated than that. I get that no one wants to be the person offended by a joke. No one wants to feel like the pie is in their face. And that's probably why there's this weird, everyone is too sensitive pushback. Like sure, I can't stress enough. The comedians are allowed to say whatever the f they want, and that people shouldn't have their lives ruined over a few jokes. But I also can't stress enough that this isn't what's happening. It's just some consequences. Can't say racist shit and also be on SNL, the year they finally hired an Asian person. Not a controversial statement. Being an entertainer is literally about knowing this. It's about knowing how words work, and that while no word should be censored, the context of using those words super matter. Like I wonder if there's someone who can point this out better than me.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with any of those words in and of themselves. They're only words. It's the context that counts. It's the user. It's the intention behind the words that makes them good or bad. The words are completely neutral. The words are innocent. I get tired of people talking about bad words and bad language. Bullshit. It's the context that makes them good or bad. The context that makes them good or bad.
Hey, that old dead man is super duper right. Words are tools. You can use them to build something fantastic or funny or profound, or you can use them to hurt people who don't deserve it in painfully unentertaining ways. And sometimes, like tools, words have to be used very carefully to avoid disaster. Like a chainsaw or whatever this thing is. It's up to the craftsman to understand that very basic idea. And that Shane Gillis guy, craftsman. Though again, he's pretty funny in that sketch about the hero fireman getting fired for being a Trump supporter.
Oh, dude, I love Trump. I love Donald Trump so much, dude.
What the f? Was this you last night?
Are we not talking about the fire that happened?
This is about whether or not you were fit to be fighting fire the night after a bender.
But like, you know that old dead guy I just showed video of? He did a joke making fun of mass deaths that was probably not unfunny. It was for a special plan to be titled, I Kinda Like It When a Lot of People Die. And it happened to be recorded on the days of September 9th and 10th of 2001. And the next day, something else happened. And he cut the bit and he changed the special because he was a man very aware of the time he lived in and what words were and weren't appropriate. He knew that while comedy technically has no boundaries, good comedy totally does. People love to pull out the Carlin card. Carlin would hate these sensitive babies, these whiny millennials, so sensitive about racism and sexism. And maybe, but I'm going to quickly read another quote from Carlin about Andrew Dice Clay. And I'm already on the edge of my seat, wondering if it will have anything to do with everything we've talked about, or even specific people we've talked about. Most comedians, myself included, pick on people who have some power and position and abuse it. But Clay, he picks on foreigners, homosexuals, and women, who are all underdogs in this society. And it makes me wonder what he's thinking, because he says all these things and his audience responds because he plays to their prejudices. But he's Jewish, and doesn't he know that these same people who hate gays and foreigners and women have Jews somewhere on their list? So, yeah. Shut the f*** up about the evils of cancel culture, you insufferable snowflakes. Also, you are babies. Big, stupid babies with dick-shaped heads and vagina mouths. Big talking babies with bulbous, phallic forms and floppy labia, jack-jawing orifices, and a lot of veins. Everywhere there's veins. That's you right now. It's disgusting. And frankly, I'm pretty offended by it. And furthermore, Nick... Surprise! We've been uncanceled. Thanks for watching. If you disagree, that's fine. Sound off in the comments and fight each other. It'll be really fun for everybody. Make sure to check out our podcast, Even More News. If you want to support us on patreon.com/somemore-news, go to the URL I just said. And we got TeePublic and like and subscribe. And the things that people say at the end of their YouTube videos. Do those. Click the like button.